Okay, so this video is for our Arduki. This is a reply to a Gab thread where I don't know who runs these accounts, but the general semantics theory, when you analyze the word selection, the syntax, the nuance, the sentence structure, it does match someone with a higher level of education and experience from Europe, but it could be anybody. I'm going to take it at face value as it's a real person who really is. There is a match between this anonymous account that presents itself online and the real person behind the screen, behind the keyboard. We got rice cooking, so gonna stop any minute now. Anyway, so the discussion was about marijuana, Jews, and goys, and religion. So I'm just gonna give a general update here because what's on the internet doesn't always reflect real life. If anything, the internet is used by a wealthy, powerful minority with no loyalty to any flag or nation or etc. to Jew the goyim, essentially, to social program, social engineer. Yeah, just to flood America, for example, with drugs and porn and immigrants and, just population reduction and replacement with marijuana and electronic devices are a part of that, communication networks, nodes and ties, data strategies. Yeah. Um, so real life observations. So I moved into this house in Roanoke, and it specifically says on the lease no marijuana smoking is allowed on the property. I move in, and there's multiple violations of the lease. The landlady is a black, overweight woman who is a Christian, and it's weird to me. I didn't realize that there was black liberals, but Christianity is essentially liberal. This is why Christian conservatives are basically just dickless pussies that don't stop any of the things they bitch about, because it requires action. Like prayer fails, but action works. And they don't do action. They bury their head in the sand. The Jesus blinders pretend like it's not happening. Just ignore it. It'll go away or fix itself. Or Jesus will take care of it, even if that doesn't happen within my lifetime. Yeah. Um, so the violations were from two of the roommates, now three. A third one moved in. That would be Bobby, Vincent, and Dean. And the black woman downstairs, her grandson was smoking it. And I actually got him to stop. Like they actually did enforce the lease a little bit for that guy. Vincent is the old man across the hall. His drug use has prematurely aged him. He's a drug dealer. He's a white, Christian, and conservative. Check on the rice. And then a man named Dean Hudson moved in downstairs, and they all show signs of marijuana use. These are all old white men, um, so I'm not sure if I should do this sequentially, like a timeline. We'll do it that way, right? So first moving in, Vincent, who had severe problems from his marijuana use, not just premature aging, but he has trouble speaking and forming words and walking, and he also does cigarettes and alcohol. And even though he swore to me he's not smoking it in the house, I kept smelling it in the house coming out of his room, so I knew he was full of shit. And then I took a photo when I went in his room for the first time, and I saw marijuana on his table in a pipe, and it had been clearly smoked in his room. He had a lighter and an ashtray on his table. And I took that picture and sent it to the landlady. Now, the landlady, because Christianity retards her, or she's all about greed, she swears that, oh, well, the most important thing to Christianity is not to discriminate. No discrimination of any kind. Like, what a fucking retard. Her drug using tenants are devaluing and destroying her property. Their drug use is causing all kinds of problems in their environment that they're not aware of or doing anything about because the marijuana and the alcohol and, et cetera, it's shutting down cognitive functions, and handicapping cognitive functions is what gives it monetary value. If it didn't do that, it'd be placebo, it'd be bunk, it'd be fucking worthless. So the drug pushers are full of shit. about the whole "it's not a drug." Yeah, drug dealers never lie. That's what Jesus says. It's so fucking retarded and full of shit. The landlady was a pastor, and the Bible says women aren't supposed to be pastors. And she says, "My church is all about what the Bible say. Ain't no denominations." It's fucking stupid. Anyway, so yeah, that happened with Vince, and he got mad that I'd get him kicked out. And I'm like, well, why are you mad at me instead of being mad at yourself for breaking the rules of the lease? Like, instead of being mad at me for catching you and whatever, snitching you out, you should be mad at yourself for fucking up and failing to at least just take it away, take it off the property. Now, personally, I think every marijuana smoker should be executed, and that would be the best way to reduce the population. That would be the most beneficial thing for humanity and the globe and the earth and the environment, etc. Just fucking flat out executions, along with marijuana dealers, distributors, growers, and corrupt politicians that are whores to the marijuana industry. Rice. Right. Okay. So after that, then there was Bobby. Bobby was the one in the room next to me, and he was the one who was shitting himself. It started with I could smell marijuana smoke once Vincent had actually stopped smoking in the house somewhat. Um, Bobby was then I'd smell it coming out of Bobby's room and Bobby's door, which I'd smell off and on for a while. I was suspicious, but didn't have any evidence. When he started shitting himself, that was a really strong sign that he was doing that. Now, the funny thing is, he had asked me for a lighter, and I told him I'm anti-marijuana. I was Jewish there for a while, or trying to convert to Judaism, and so the only reason I had lighters was to light my candles for Shabbat. And the Jews just push drugs and fuck me over, and they're just evil and vile, and drugs, marijuana, pornography, immigrants. Bleh. And so it didn't work out. Like even now, I get the kippah on. I was like, maybe I could go back to Judaism. The first fucking thing I noticed is the Jews are using their control of Google to falsify and rewrite the history of Hitler being Jewish. It was a whole thing. So I don't speak Yiddish. I don't know anything about Yiddish. I found out Adolf Hitler's father was Alois Hitler, but originally was Schicklgruber because his mother, Hitler's grandmother, Maria Schicklgruber, had Alois out of wedlock. And Google taught me that Schicklgruber is Yiddish for Sheckelgrubber or Shekel grabber. So I researched that last night, and Google, Chat GPT, Meta, like all the search engines and artificial intelligences have all been programmed. I just simply searched Schickelgruber Yiddish, Schickelgruber translation, Schickelgruber meaning. Oh, a lot of conspiracies will say that Adolf Hitler was Jewish, and this has nothing to do with Yiddish. There's no Yiddish translation for Schickelgruber. That's weird because Google is the one that taught me that Schickelgruber was Yiddish for shekel grabber or shekel grubber. And so I went to Google Translate English to Yiddish and I put shekel grabber and it translated into Schickelgruber. And then I reversed the translation and it said shekel graver, which is funny because they're trying to claim it's this German Bavarian dialect, which has to do with grave, right? Like graver, like you're digging a grave or something. And so Google is full of shit. They're the ones. It's a tool of the aforementioned elite, wealthy, and powerful minority that's Jew and the Goyim, and that's a perfect example. But I digress. So, well, I was thinking of going back to Judaism. There's the Jews line about the Holocaust and Hitler being Jewish, etc. They always fuck it up. I can't help it. It's weird. Anyway, so Vincent being a junkie turned out to be a drug dealer as well. And I reported all this to police. The police did nothing because, white Christians or Jesus hates the drug-free people and fucks over the drug-free people because, Jesus is evil or something. Like, it's fucking weird. The landlady doesn't want to admit that it's greed. I had a brief thing with Islam. My cousin's Sunni. I started attending the local masjid, doing the salah. And the Muslims, hilariously enough, oh, the rice is ready. Abdullah told me that Christians are driven by greed, not justice. And so they will always choose money over what is right. And that's what my landlady did here. That's why she's not enforcing the rules on her lease. That's why she's not kicking anybody out. She tells me it's a Christian altruism. So she's masking her greed with altruism. Oh, Jesus, the least of us, no discrimination. Bah! What a moron, right? She's actually losing money in the long run by being greedy and full of shit in the short run. But she's trying to convince, she's pissing on my leg and telling me it's raining and then gets upset when I don't want to buy an umbrella. Just like the Jews and the rabbis and the Christians and the white people and the white roommates here, etc. Not all of them, but at least these three. So Bobby started shitting himself. There was a shit smear on the bathtub and then right outside of his door, and that was caused by his marijuana use. So it's possible my giving him that lighter, I made him promise not to use it to smoke marijuana, and then he used it to smoke marijuana, and then he ended up shitting himself, and then he ended up homeless. First there was two like human turd drips, one on the side of the bathtub, one in front of his door. He likely stepped in it and then spread it all over his room and all over the house. And then there was more shit drips and shit marks like on the wall. He was stealing my toilet paper. All that's marijuana use. Well, his marijuana use got to the point that he lost his rent money and then his smartphone, and then he just left here on a bicycle with a backpack to a homeless shelter. So the landlady, being, Christian greedy retard, like all Christians and Mormons, etc., they all compromise their values for money. She lost income by losing that tenant, but had she just intervened on his marijuana use and forced him to quit, she wouldn't have lost money. So it's kind of hilarious to me how drug dealers lie. There's possibly going to be comments or thumbs down in this video from the drug pushers. No, that's not how it works. He's lying. Marijuana is harmless. It has nothing to do with any of this stuff. Don't attribute the awful behavior of the marijuana user to their marijuana use. What? You're telling me marijuana doesn't have an influence on behavior? Then what's the point of doing it? Oh, it's only good, no bad things whatsoever. Yeah, fucking right. Yeah. So this denial of reality, whether it's Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, whatever, this just fucking flat out denial of the fact that marijuana is causing these harms has downstream harms that come back on the people who refuse to admit the truth, like the landlady. And so Bobby's shitting himself and ending up homeless from his marijuana use. And then there's the third guy. Yeah, Dean Hudson, the dude who threatened me with a knife and a gun. So Dean moved in and right away just started smoking weed in the house. Dude's a polysubstance abuser, alcoholic, etc. The gateway drug effect from marijuana. I guarantee it. But he also had an overdose about a month ago now, where his heart had stopped, and he tried to bullshit me that it was a stroke, but I know it wasn't a stroke. Like his left arm was not numb, the left side of his face was not numb, and all of a sudden he was willing to fight while having a stroke, which I got on video. Yeah, it was cocaine. The pattern with him was he would come upstairs around 10 a.m. or so and knock on Vincent's door. Vincent right across the hall from me. I'd get pictures, and he would give me the stink eye for taking pictures, but whatever. And they would be hammered and drunk, and the whole house would stink like marijuana by 5 p.m. that night. That was the pattern: 10 a.m., 5 p.m., without exception. And it seemed like he was dealing, like the fucking pattern matched drug dealing. He would only go in there for a few minutes and then come out. So he's distributing. They are exchanging drugs for money. Well, after he got out of the hospital, I just stopped engaging with him. I didn't give a shit. Fuck it, dude. I used Nazi science to cut off the shitbag roommate influence. That's a really interesting thing in itself, which I'll get into in a sec. But Dean. So Dean would come up and I would hear him fall and hit the floor, stumbling drunk or on marijuana and cocaine and alcohol and cigarettes and God knows what else. But maybe he quit the cocaine. I don't know. I know that while he was in the hospital, he had done a drop. Like he resupplies every time he comes upstairs to knock, and then he distributes to Vincent. He does a drop to Vincent. And then Vincent had a black dude covered in tattoos with really bloodshot eyes as guest the night that Dean left. And I'm like, oh, so now that Vincent has scored cocaine or whatever from the marijuana junkie, he's selling it. He's dealing drugs on the side. This is a drug dealing operation. I've reported this to the police, and they're just like fucking clowns about it. I don't get why the police aren't enforcing the fucking drug laws. Oh, well, George Floyd. Oh, Ahmaud Arbery. Oh, Jesus hates the righteous and loves the wicked. It's fucking weird. This isn't just marijuana. The fucking 1980s, 1990s police, they were right. It had a gateway drug effect. This dude's on fucking cocaine. And the cops are just, it's like the police in New Mexico when I reported the methamphetamine use with the marijuana use. Oh, well, we would do something, but, well, the corrupt politicians that own the banks, or the bank owners that own the corrupt politicians, they tell us, fuck you. Right? Like, the job of the government and the police is not to protect the poor from the rich. It's to protect the rich from the poor, while the rich fuck over the poor. And the police are the poor, or most of them. So most of the police are helping the rich fuck over their own people. These are turncoats. These are backstabbers. These are betrayers to their own people. Same with the military. Like, don't think for a second. Don't buy the propaganda. And I know social media is flooded with a lot of fucking spam propaganda on all the websites. Don't buy it. I digress. So Dean, yeah, he showed back up and he was falling down at the top of the stairs, knocking on Vincent's doors, begging him to call the landlady. I didn't bother calling the cops for him. I would be glad if he died. He's a fucking marijuana junkie. I think all marijuana junkies should fucking die horrible, painful fucking deaths. So I'm not gonna call 911 for that guy. I'm not gonna save his fucking life again. Fuck that. And I looked it up. I'm not obligated to in the state of Virginia. So I took a whole mental health certification thing, but this guy threatened to stab and shoot me while overdosing on cocaine, alcohol, marijuana, and tobacco. In Judaism, I learned this from YouTube lucky number 11 clips that if someone has expressed their intent to kill you, if you kill them first, it's okay. It's self-defense. Now, and this is really disheartening because I'm learning a lot of court and legal ethics in forensic psychology. None of that actually applies in court in real life. Like, take me for example. I've had a couple run-ins with the law. Not once was I assessed or evaluated for incompetence or a diagnostic, label of schizophrenia, which would have been a valid legal defense. Not once. But then I look at that black guy in Detroit that murdered that white man by beating him to death during COVID. Oh, he got a schizophrenia defense, so he didn't get any fucking jail time. And then to Carlos Brown Jr., another cannabis-induced psychotic, just like the black guy that murdered that white dude, right? They both used marijuana and murdered while under the influence of marijuana. Innocent, good white people. Um, he went to a mental hospital, and I'm like, oh, it's because I'm not black, so my life doesn't matter. If I was black, then I would have gotten ethical treatment. I would have gotten an assessment and evaluation for a legal defense, and I would have gone to like a treatment facility instead of having to go to court at all and fucking get convicted and shit. I see how it is. The law is very subjective, open to interpretation, and weaponized against good people to protect the wicked. Now, I think that Carlos Brown Jr. was also released into a hospital because the government knows that this is the incidents cannabis are causing, which means the government is placing itself at fault. They're treating DeCarlos Brown Jr. as though he's the victim. You know, the guy who stabbed that Ukrainian refugee in the heart while she was on the subway. He's the victim of the Jews, the Epstein Island client list, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the plutocracy, pushing marijuana on the poor. But it's weird how that is very subjective and circumstantial on when it applies and when it doesn't, right? Bryn Spedger got it, but Samuel Woolward didn't in Cannabis-Induced Psychosis Legal Defense. Seems pretty anti-white, but these three white men that I'm living with who are drug users and drug dealers, they kind of prove that Whitey's self-inflicting his own destruction and scapegoating Jews and glam. But that doesn't excuse the shitty behavior of the Jews and the blacks and the coloreds and etc. I digress. So prior to Dean's whole thing, I was attending the Mormon church and they were helping me out with food and there was like beautiful young women and it was really nice. But then a woman was smoking weed inside the building while I was volunteering for their food bank to pad my resume. And that led to this whole debate with this boomer, who brainwashed Christian boomer, Mormon boomer, who will not denounce Israel under any circumstances. And he was regurgitating. He had been programmed by social media. I simply asked, why doesn't the Mormon church oppose marijuana legalization? And you'd think it would, but his response was like, oh, well, the prohibition doesn't stop it from happening. And I'm like, right. Prohibition doesn't stop pedophilia from happening. Prohibition doesn't stop child rape from happening. So we should just legalize it, right? He didn't respond. So then I said, okay, so would it be okay for me to murder marijuana dealers since prohibition doesn't stop homicide from happening? No, that's not okay. Oh, so you do agree with laws, right? It's not. His point was, or his stance, I should say, was that it's all about free agency, that it's important to give every individual their power over their own free will, the power to choose. And I pointed out, well, secondhand marijuana is forced drugging. That is against my will and without my consent. That is not my fucking choice. I'm being drugged through involuntary exposure to secondhand marijuana against my will and without my consent. This is causing tangible harms. Oh, well, you know, Jesus' plan is fuck you. This is why the Nazis came to power. The Christians failed to fucking just be, do the right thing and stop the drug pushers and the porn pushers. I can understand why communists de-Christianize Russia. Christians are corrupt and full of shit. It's fucking true. If that wasn't true, America would not be flooded with drugs and porn and this Weimarization right now. And that's exactly what the dude, he was brainwashed, more susceptible to brainwashing from his, boomer fucking Christianity and Mormonism that made him programmable by social media. And so they stopped talking to me because they couldn't answer that question honestly. It was pretty funny. And then I found out about volitional impairment, which is a legal term for, the insanity defense. Volition is will, so it means when your control over your own will is impaired via involuntary intoxication or forced drugging, for example, your reality is distorted, or your perception of reality is distorted. This is a legal defense, volitional impairment. The fact that I did not get that in 2010, despite the fact that I was living above people who were smoking marijuana and the secondhand marijuana was coming up through the floor into my room, it shows how full of shit these fucking white liberals and Christians and everyone is. Because that was Vashon Island. Those are white liberal, mostly atheists. But then the white liberals out here in, Cincinnati and DC, oh, no, if it's black, then volitional impairment and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, like, fucking, Anyway, so no more with the Mormons, went to Islam. And that was hilarious because the Muslims, like every time I would go to their masjid, which I loved it. I loved praying the five salah every day and stuff like that. Every time I went to the masjid, the neighborhood was saturated with marijuana, and the secondhand marijuana caused me to fall behind in school and get bad grades. Fortunately, I've readjusted my trajectory. I no longer have a 4.0, but I got like a 3.97. I lost 10 points in one course and I think like 5 points in the other. The reason I accomplished that was by preventing involuntary exposure to marijuana by removing it from my environment, which included no longer going to the mosque. But while I was going to the mosque, there was a Muslim there named Naeem, and he was a huge marijuana junkie. He had quit for 6 months, but it was still struggling to relapse, and he kept driving me around marijuana saturated fucking Roanoke, and this was having a very negative impact on my life and my mental health. And just like the Christians and the Mormons and the Jews and the atheists, if the words would leave my mouth, they would enter his ears, and his brain would just refuse to fucking, do right. Marijuana schizophrenia. It's fucking really not a complicated thing. And he told me that when he almost relapsed a few weeks ago, he went to Roanoke Tobacco Company where they sell THC vapes, despite the fact that it's technically illegal to sell THC in any stores. Like, nobody follows the law. That's a corrupt government is a weak government. And so the corrupt government is incapable of enforcing its own laws. But he told me that Muslims owned and ran the store, which really is hilarious because that contradicts all the white supremacist, Christian, and Jewish narratives about marijuana and Islam and etc. So I stopped attending the mosque, which sucks because I really liked it. It felt like I was part of a brotherhood. I loved Islam. It was great. In doing that, my grades have gone back up. Another thing that I did was, so this is interesting. I've been banned from so many mainstream sites that I went to all these fringe sites like Gab, and that led me to watch the Lecter report for Ernst Zundel's trial from Fred Lecter, and when he discussed how the Zyklon B was flammable and the doors weren't gasketed, and etc., all these like scientific things, well, I applied that to this room here, and I've successfully managed to prevent secondhand marijuana from inside the house from coming into my room to a degree. And that has also caused me. So I have Sunday at midnight to Sunday at midnight modules, but because of my disability accommodations, I get an extra 24 hours on the deadline. I can turn it in Monday at midnight. I was struggling to get my assignments in Monday at midnight. Now that I've effectively prevented involuntary exposure to marijuana inside my room, I am getting back ahead of schedule. Last week I turned them in by Sunday, and today it looks like I'm going to have everything done by tomorrow, which is going to leave 3 days open for me to like work on my resume, put out my resume, read other books, etc. Like, I'm actually getting back to where I was. And the only thing that worked was preventing involuntary exposure to secondhand marijuana. No Muslim, Jew, Christian, or atheist would just be honest about that. It's fucking weird. That caused my mental acuity to return. But then I'm attending like a Christian church, and that the fucking Christians are just as retarded as the Mormons and the Jews and the Muslims, and so they just, oh well, Jesus' plan is fuck you. So got hit with involuntary exposure to marijuana as a Lutheran pastor insisted on holding me to talk to me while he's dropped me off. Yeah, it's insane that these people just don't fucking get it. Like, are they retarded for their religion? Are they religious because they're retarded? Like, I don't fucking know. But this means that Hitler has helped me more than Jesus. Like, Nazi science actually worked better than all this fucking religious bullshit. Because no matter the words or the prayers or the song and dance and the superstitions, tangible action in reality is the only thing that fucking works, right? It's a scientific method, process of elimination. By eliminating secondhand marijuana from my environment, my grades have increased, my performance has increased, my sharpness is returning, etc. It's as quantifiable. There's a numerical measurement. There's a metric to this when I turn in my assignments and the grades that I get on them. Yeah, Dean, I haven't smelled marijuana in the house in a while, but a lot of that's because I put my gas mask on anytime I walk out of the room. But the last few times that I've seen him, he was falling down, presumably drunk, at the top of the steps, begging for Vincent to call the landlord. So probably in medical emergencies, overdosing again on alcohol and marijuana and tobacco and God knows what else that's stopping his heart. But I'm okay to just let him die. Like, I don't give a fuck. And so when you get Jews like Hebrew Hammer that push marijuana online and lie about it and, oh, it's harmless and it's fine and it's medicinal, that causes harm to Jews. Marijuana, for example, Shane Tamar, I think it was, the mass shooter there in New York City, he had cannabis in his car. He was in his system while he was doing the mass shooting, and he killed two fucking Jews. So when you get Jews like Hebrew Hammer, oh, is he anything but the marijuana? That's because they only care about profit more than their fellow Jews. Just like these white junkies care more about money than their fellow whites, etc.